We're going to speak to the Shadow Secretary for Transport. We say hello, good morning to Louise Haigh. Louise, good morning to you.
Good morning.
So, potholes on your mind today?
Absolutely. Well, they're on lots of people's minds, aren't they? The state of our roads is a massive cost of living issue for drivers. We're all seeing our car insurance premiums driven up because of the cost of repairs. It's estimated that drivers had to shell out £500 million last year in pothole-related incidents, and with an average of £250 per driver. So that's why we've announced that we will defer a specific road project that was originally destined for the next Parliament into the next road investment strategy to release that money in order to invest in roads right across England, repairing and preventing up to 1 million potholes per year.
Louise, it still won't be enough. I mean, I'm not criticising you for that. I mean, the task in front of you is just mega.
Absolutely, on a whole range of issues, and we know the state of the economy that we will be inheriting if we're lucky enough to win the election, that we know the state of the public services, but we know this is a massive priority. We know lots of your viewers will be tearing their hair out at the state of their local roads and the damage it does to their cars and how dangerous it is. You know, I talk to people all the time who are having to swerve potholes and, you know, run the risk of colliding with other vehicles. So that's why it's a priority for us. But we know it's a huge challenge, and this is why we're setting out these first steps to tackle it.
Could I ask you about the science of all of this? Have you to re-examine, re-look, re-evaluate how we actually fill in potholes, the technology involved?
Definitely, and I know that is a massive frustration for people when they see their local council or a subcontractor coming along and patching up a pothole, and then the rain comes down and it reappears just a few weeks or months later. It's really poor value for money. That's why we need to have proper road surfacing treatment that expands the life expectancy of roads and reduces the need to keep on investing. It's much better value for money over the long term, but it does require local authorities to have longer term budgets so that they can invest in the prevention, whether that be new technology or different types of road surfacing treatment. This is absolutely what we're announcing today, rather than constantly coming along and patching up and you know, council taxpayers having to pay the price over and over again, as well as the cost being passed on to drivers
Louise,
and car insurance.
Just an observation, and for what it's worth, I think until you guys or local authorities stop granting cable companies the right to dig up everybody's roads after they've been repaired and whatever, that is a big danger. I'm just saying that I think you could put cables overhead on pylons and whatever, but as soon as you start digging up the roads again, everything goes to pot.
Yeah, it is a massive issue. You're absolutely right, and it's really difficult to negotiate. It's the same when you lay tram tracks and any kind of infrastructure delivery with cables and underground cables. So you know, that is something that needs to be redressed in the balance between the rights of utility providers and the rights of local authorities and other infrastructure providers.
Louise, you talk about our viewers and listeners tearing their hair out about potholes, and I think you're absolutely right. But what our viewers and listeners will also be doing is laughing at the idea of Labour trying to be the party for drivers. You only have to look at the disaster in Wales with the 20-mile-an-hour rollout there, and the state of London under Sadiq Khan. I mean, drivers absolutely fed up with Labour, and you only have to look at what happened in the Uxbridge by-election to understand what drivers think of Labour. It's a tough sell for you, this one.
Well, I think with the party that we're up against that's overseeing the car insurance premiums rise by an average of £200 over the last 2 years, the state of our local roads as a direct consequence of Tory policy, this is why we're setting out an agenda today that will actually tackle the cost of living for drivers and improve the state of our roads, rather than indulge in culture wars that the vast majority of drivers actually don't experience. Sadiq Khan was just elected again for a historic third term. So I think the people of London have given their verdict on him. But we want to make sure that we are putting money back in people's pockets and bringing down the cost of driving, particularly for those people who don't have an alternative. You know, if you live in the countryside, you don't necessarily have access to a bus or a train. Now, separately to these plans, we want to radically reform public transport, so it is an option, but at the moment it's not an option for everyone, and that's why we want to bring down the cost of driving, which will be the main priority for the vast majority of your viewers.
And speaking of people who have been re-elected, possible Jeremy Corbyn might well be. How much of a problem is he for Sir Keir Starmer? I noticed that he was calling the Tory manifesto a Jeremy Corbyn-style manifesto, which is a bit rich, seeing as Sir Keir Starmer was serving under Corbyn just a few years ago. And then Corbyn hitting back, talking about Labour claiming that their plans are fully costed, and he was saying that's absolute nonsense. How much of a problem is Jeremy Corbyn sniping from the sidelines for you?
Well, look, what Keir said yesterday was that we have learnt our lessons from the 2019 general election manifesto. The people of this country roundly rejected it, and it led to us having our worst election defeat in our history. The Tories, by contrast, have obviously not learnt the lessons from the disastrous Liz Truss mini-budget, which led to interest rates being raised, and people are still now paying the cost of that with increased mortgages. What the Tories set out yesterday was billions of pounds in unfunded spending commitments, which would have an even bigger impact than Liz Truss's disastrous experiment less than 2 years ago. We've learnt our lessons. Tomorrow we'll be publishing our manifesto, which will set out a series of policies that will tackle the cost of living crisis, will rebuild our public services, but will be funded and will be costed.
And we will discuss all of that, as you'd expect, tomorrow. Just lastly, the front of the eye, talking about this Labour promise to introduce £12 an hour to care workers. I think most people would agree that care workers are terribly underpaid, and more should be done to recognise the hard work that they do. But I suppose the question is, since we're talking about how things are costed and funding, how would a Labour government pay for that? We know that government funds an awful lot of care. Would this mean an increase in local authority bills? I mean, how are you going to pay for that?
So I don't know where I got the story from. That's not a reflection of any commitment. What we have committed to is a fair pay agreement in the care sector, which will reflect negotiations on pay, because absolutely a lot of care workers are underpaid. Some don't even receive the minimum wage. But it will also reflect the issues about conditions in the care sector, the fact that there is a lack of opportunities to progress in the care service, the fact that a lot of care workers are not properly qualified to do the very medical work that some of them do in care homes and in the community. And that's why we've set out as a very early priority. We will negotiate with local authorities, with employers and with care workers to set in place a fair pay agreement that will tackle recruitment and retention in the care sector.
Louise, just getting back to your brief, you could be the future Secretary of State for Transport. And I don't know if you would have any powers on this front, but you talk about putting money back in people's pockets and whatever. I tell you what's in an awful state at the moment: car insurance. People will talk to you about I mean, these insurance companies are really having a laugh at our expense. There are some cars that you just can't get insured, for instance. Is that something that would be within your powers to look at?
Absolutely, and it's one of the elements of the plan that we've put out today. Car insurance has risen at a far greater rate than some of our European neighbours, and so we've said that we will bring in the Competition and Markets Authority to investigate the causes of that rise in insurance premiums, over £200 on average over the last 2 years. And we know they're employing lots of rip-off devices as well, so we'd want to bring in the Financial Conduct Authority to investigate several of those. We think they're far inflating the cost of pricing premiums onto consumers, so we would, as a priority, call in the regulators to tackle the insurance market in this country.
Louise, thank you. Appreciate it. Louise Haigh is the Shadow Secretary of State for Transport. Thank you for your time this morning. Thank you.